Hello, it's Leslie here again. Today I thought I would tell you a little bit about my background, my heritage, if you like, my language's background. So I'm born in Australia and I have only spoken one language as an adult. My mother's side of the family is all Dutch, so that they're all Dutch. Unfortunately, I don't speak Dutch. I'll explain that in a minute. And my father's side is English. So I have a bit of a weird family in that my mother was born in Venezuela but raised by Dutch parents. So she immigrated to Australia when she was 6, I believe, and decided to start speaking English straight away, and she forgot all about Dutch. Although she does speak Dutch, it's a more passive Dutch, so she understands Dutch very well, except for very complex topics and words. So, yeah, and although she doesn't really like the sound of Dutch, and I think that passed on to me, and so I wasn't that interested in learning Dutch. So that language hasn't been passed on to me. So I could never get the Dutch vowels right. I just got completely mixed up with the U and all these, or and all these different vowels, and my Dutch never got off the ground even. Forget it. It was terrible. So my cousins, however, do speak Dutch here in Australia. So, on my father's side, he was actually born in Ireland and raised in England. So that's all mostly an English background. My father actually grew up in World War II during the London bombing campaign, of the Hitler regime. So that has affected me as well. So, what I was going to say is that, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed up multicultural family. There's some sort of Spanish thrown in there as well because, my auntie on my mother's side, and my uncle also lived in Venezuela. They all immigrated, that family immigrated to Venezuela during, I think it was after the war, after the Second World War, when there was no work in Holland, and so some of my relatives speak Spanish as well. So I think this kind of had some effect on me. Some members of my family were very multilingual. So on my father's side, though, pretty much they all speak English only, I think. I don't actually know my family very well overseas, so it's kind of weird though when I think about the number of passports that I've been entitled to. A Venezuelan passport. I do have a British passport. At one time I was eligible for a Spanish passport. Crazy. Yeah. Now about me, I do speak Spanish. It's one of my most what's how to describe it. It's probably the language that I know the best out of all of them because I've studied it the longest and been exposed to Spanish the longest. So when I was 28, I moved to Spain, but not mainland Spain. I went to live in the Canary Islands, funnily enough. I'll explain that in another video because it's not really relevant in this one. But I actually spent 8 long years there on that island, so I got immersed in the culture and I lived with a Spanish family there. So Spanish was, drummed into me, and I know Spanish quite well. Spanish, I never really planned to learn Spanish. I always wanted to learn Italian. That was the main one that I wanted to learn when I was at high school, and a bit after high school when I was a teenager, a little bit after, my early 20s. I always wanted to learn Italian, not Spanish, but things happen and it ended up being that Spanish was the one that I learned first. So I spent 8 years on Tenerife, the island, and it's a very beautiful place. I won't go into too much about that. I might explain that in another video. But I was immersed in that culture for quite some time. So I left Spanish when I left. I went there to live there in 2000 at the end of 2005, and I came back in 2000 and end of 2014, I think it was, almost 2015. So it was like 8 or 9 years I spent there. When I came back, I kind of gave up Spanish because I was a little bit over it, and I didn't. It had sort of negative memories for me at the time. So I left Spanish for quite a while, and it was only when I started watching Money Heist that I really got back into Spanish again. So I had a 5-year break, which I recommend you don't do that. I was kind of lucky because I was there 8 years, and I suppose 8 years, and then I had a 5-year break. It's not quite so bad. If I was there, say, 8 months, and then I had a 5-year break, it would be worse. So I think, if you're studying something, a week, and then you have a week break, well, okay, but, you don't want to be studying for, I don't know, 3 months and never have a 3-year break, because you won't remember anything. So as it turned out, I didn't really forget my Spanish. I still have it in my head. I can still speak Spanish. I don't have anyone to speak Spanish with, though. But for example, when I was watching Money Heist, I think I only had to look up 2 words, which were hadea, which is like, not cough, but, what's the word in English? Yeah, hadea, which I had to look up then. Gasp. So I had to look up that word hadea, which I had seen it before, but it's one of those words I didn't really look up or remember. I was lazy at the time. And the other word was rehen. Rehen is hostage, and I think, that I picked that up very quickly during the Money Heist, because it's all about hostages. So I'm lucky, I think, that I didn't forget any of my Spanish, because it came in handy when I wanted to learn Italian. So I kind of feel that Italian now is a kind of almost a bonus language for me. Although I've studied it for 2 years now, nearly 18 months, it felt quite easy for me, relatively speaking. And so I consider it like almost a bonus language for me. Although my spoken Italian is probably terrible, although I can understand, spoken Italian now, so that's fine. That's all I really want. I won't speak about the other languages that I know and that I'm learning at the moment, because this video is supposed to be about the past, really. So I think, that should sort of give you some background to how I started learning languages. In 2005, when I went to Spain, to the Canary Islands, YouTube wasn't even really a thing. So I had to go about it a different way. But one of the things I'd like to do in this channel is there's a lot of people who think that the only way to learn a language really well is to go and live in the country and be immersed in it and all that. But what I'm trying to do now is really learn a language outside of the country. Not everyone has the opportunity or the possibility or the capability to go and live in another country. It's a massive, commitment. It's a massive step and a massive jump. And when you're a bit older, you're very reluctant. Maybe when you're in your 20s, you're really confident or overconfident, and you just do it without even thinking. But when you're older, it's, I think, a bit harder. So what I've tried to do here since I've come back is learn Italian without being in Italy, and learn Russian without being in Russia. And I think it is possible. I didn't think it was I didn't think it was when I started, but I thought I would have to go at the bare minimum to live in a city. But living in rural Australia, I found another way. I just wanted it enough, and I found another way to get it without actually having to move to another country. So I hope you can appreciate this video and my channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Yeah, that's all from me today. Thank you for watching. Bye.
My mother was raised in Holland. Sorry, that's not right.